Hello, my friends, and welcome to day 5 of the Strong Mom Nutrition Protocol Challenge. Yes, I am in the car, but I am not the one driving. We're driving through downtown Anchorage with my gorgeous daughter, who is driving. And we thought this would be a perfect time to talk about evolutionary psychology, the reason why our brain wants to survive, and the motivational triad. Yes, we are talking about survival mechanisms while I am riding as a passenger in a car while my teenage daughter is driving.
Hey.
Pray for me? I'm just kidding. So we've crammed a lot of information into the past 5 days. I don't want you all to feel a sense of overwhelm. Know that you will always have access to these videos so that you can revisit them at any point. But today I want to also pull it all together and talk a little bit about brain structure and the reasons why we as human beings overeat and not exercise enough. Essentially, why the heck are we so lazy? The reason why I want to get into this is because it explains the foundational premise behind my entire Strong Mom Coaching Fitness program. Essentially, that I am not here to just give you the answers or a diet plan or a fitness plan, that you need to seek out for yourself what motivates you so that you can hold on to it and it has meaning for you. Understanding the way the brain works will help you gain clarity around why this is the only process or the only format that will ever help you lose weight and obtain the goals that you want. So let's just start 101, Psychology 101, and do a quick review of brain structure and how we have essentially evolved or have been created to get to the point where our brain functions the way we do. So I like to talk a lot about the toddler brain and the adult brain. And you've heard these terms before, I'm sure, in terms of upper and lower brain. Some people will also talk about the adult or the lizard brain or the evolved upper brain. So I call them the toddler and the adult brain because I think it's appropriate and I understand what it's like to have a toddler, and so do you. So we talk about the upper brain or the adult brain, and that's really the frontal lobes of your brain. So this is the largest part. Humans have the largest frontal lobes than any other mammal on the earth. So we've evolved really to have a very high operating upper brain. It's responsible for our cognitive thinking, so our ability to make decisions, understand the future and make plans for the future. This is an interesting one. It's also that prefrontal, that frontal lobe is responsible for controlling our impulses. So our instinct or desire to go eat 17 pints of Ben & Jerry's, right? It's that frontal lobe, that upper brain or that adult brain that is responsible for regulating those very natural impulses. Okay, so that's the upper brain. Let's talk about our lower brain. This refers to, or the toddler brain, refers to the stem and the cerebellum. The lower brain is existent in all mammals, and it ensures our basic survival through regulation of our autonomic nervous system. So the lower brain is the portion of our brain that's responsible for ensuring that we eat, that we sleep, that we have sex, that we survive, and we do those basic activities that ensure our survival. Here's the trick. If you are not consciously recruiting your adult brain, your toddler brain is going to take over. I have this visual that I like to play with. It's like giving a toddler a pair of scissors. What are they going to do? They're going to run with the scissors, right? So when your adult brain is not in charge, the toddler brain is going to grab those scissors and run. You have to force your adult brain to be in charge. Some of us have to cognizantly make an attempt for our adult brain to be in charge more often than others. I'll use my husband as an example. I swear he came out of the womb just having this innate ability to control his impulses and to think about the future and plan. It just comes very naturally to him. Whereas I am a very impulsive person. I'm also a creative, kind of empathetic person. And I really do have to make an effort to control my impulses. Not necessarily control them, but to think about my impulses in a way that ensures that my adult brain is in charge. You see in where you fall on this scale? And we're all in different levels of the scale, whether or not we have the ability to easily recruit the adult brain or if it takes effort. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's just the way you're wired, and that's okay. And that is also why this information will help you ensure that you're wiring it in the way that you want to go to produce the results that you want. So, toddler and adult brain. You guys got that? Now let's take that information and let's apply it to a concept that I feel like explains so much about our natural desires to overeat and not exercise. And this is called the motivational triad. Now, the motivational triad is an evolutionary theory that was developed by clinical psychologist Dr. Doug Liesel Allen and Alan Goldhammer. And it was first outlined in their book called The Pleasure Trap. It's an interesting book. I'll put a link to it, an Amazon link to it in the show notes. If you're looking for a book to read, I recommend it. They theorize that as a species, we've survived because our brain is motivated by three principles. So again, this motivational triad. The first principle is to seek pleasure. Our brain wants food and sex. These are the basics. So our lower brain, right, our mammalian toddler brain wants food and sex. This is the basic ingredient for our survival. So our brain has these physiological responses that cause us to associate food with pleasure. Now think back to our lesson yesterday where we talked about false hunger and true hunger. Can you see how and why your lower toddler brain, this part of our brain that is responsible for our autonomic nervous system, just tends to create this false hunger? You see the reason why we have the false hunger? It's to seek pleasure. So we know why we have false hunger, because our toddler brain needs it to seek pleasure, right? But check this out. With the advancements in current food and scientific discoveries with what gives us pleasure and how they have added all of these ingredients into our food to increase pleasure, our lower toddler brain has not caught up with that fact. Our toddler brain does not understand that sugar is an intensely dopamine producing substance that will really, really trigger that pleasure receptor, but not necessarily give us the benefits that we want, because for every escalation of dopamine, we have a crash of dopamine. And our toddler brain hasn't figured that out. We have to recruit our adult brain to control that natural instinct and that natural urge. Additionally, our toddler brain doesn't understand that we physiologically will build a resistance. So, for example, if we think about addiction, you take a substance that creates dopamine, and eventually you'll need more and more and more to get that same level of rush. Your toddler brain doesn't understand that. Oh, Oriana, we go right here.
Oh, okay. Whoops.
So talk about adult and toddler brain, right? I'm like, what, navigating and so our brain has not yet evolved. Our toddler brain has not evolved to understand that we have to consciously recognize that the more ice cream I eat, the more pleasure I will get, which means that the next time I go to eat ice cream, I've got to eat twice as much to be able to obtain that level of pleasure. Our toddler brain doesn't register that. We have to consciously recruit our adult brain to figure that one out. Just a second. Okay, so the first pleasure principle of the motivational triad, or the first principle in the motivational triad, is to seek pleasure. The second principle in the motivational triad, the second thing that our brain does naturally in order to survive, is to avoid pain. So our goal, of course, is to stay alive, at least as long as we can to reproduce, right? That's what our lower brain is wired to do. So how do we stay alive long enough to reproduce? Eating, of course. Again, our toddler brain does not register that the food that we're eating is exceptionally high in calories. It just simply associates food with survival. So if we think back to our ancestors' days of hunter-gatherer, when they would have long extended periods of time without any food, and then they would hunt and gather and have a ton of food, you know, our brain was kind of wired to go in this with and without, and it doesn't understand that by eating 7 pints of Ben and Jerry's, that we are inundating our system with calories, more energy than our body can take. Your lower brain doesn't understand that. It just thinks, oh, more is better. We need to survive. Again, if we just allow the lower toddler brain to operate on its own, we're just giving it the scissors and it's going to run. The adult brain has to consciously step in and create thoughts that prevent that natural impulse from occurring. The third component of the motivational triad is to be efficient. So and it makes sense. And if we're wired, if we've evolved to seek pleasure and to avoid pain, our brain really needs to be efficient about our activities in order to preserve energy. So if our goal is to preserve energy by being efficient, we're not going to have a natural innate desire to exercise. We're going to have a natural innate desire to lay on the sofa, watch Game of Thrones, and eat the whole bag of Oreo cookies. That is what your toddler brain wants to do. Can I get an amen? Or rewind the scene of John and Danny over and over again? What? Never mind. And so again, that's your lower brain, your toddler brain. That's the natural response that it's going to have. You have to recruit the adult brain in order to change that natural impulse. Okay, so that's the overview of the adult and toddler brain, knowing that your toddler brain, which is that lower part, that lower region of your brain that exists in order for us to survive, is motivated by 3 things: seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and being efficient. Those are the 3 primary motivations of your lower brain. If you do not deliberately attempt to recruit your upper adult brain, you will always revert back to those 3 motivating principles. You got it? So this is really important to know, because if you're in a position of overeating and you think that something is wrong with you, you know that it's not. Your brain is doing exactly what it was wired to do. That can be a really comforting feeling, right? Because it takes the self-blame off of you and gives you a cognitive understanding of why you're doing this. And it also empowers you to know that just that your brain is doing this naturally, you can untrain your brain and rewire new habits that will help your brain produce the results that you want. So here are some mindset tricks that have been incredibly powerful in the Strong Mom Training Fitness program, and that I want to introduce briefly to you today. And we're going to practice these in our homework as well today. So the first mindset trick that we utilize, let me back up a little bit. In order to get our adult brain to activate and monitor the toddler brain, we have to be aware of the fact that our toddler brain has those scissors and that our toddler brain is running. Most of the time, we are not even aware. We have gone unconscious. Think about the scenario of your kids running in circles around the house. Eventually, you just kind of tune them out, and you can sit there and read a book, and your kids are screaming at the top of their lungs. You've gone unconscious, and that's very much what we have done with our brain. Our natural response is to allow our toddler brain to take over. We go unconscious, and our adult brain doesn't step up. We have to stop that at the beginning. So here are some mindset tricks that will keep your brain from going unconscious and will activate your upper brain. Now, just like any new thing that you learn, you have to deliberately practice these tricks in the beginning, because You want them to be a natural response. So right now we have to deliberately practice them. So here they are, 3 mindset tricks. The first one is to observe your urges. So recognizing that our toddler brain is wired to seek pleasure, you know naturally you're going to have urges. At the Alaska State Fair the other day, there was so many delicious smells, and I was very much in a place of thinking, oh, it would be delicious to have X, Y, or Z. I stepped back. I recognized the urge. I called myself out on it. I watched it happen. And I also understood that the urge was part of my lower toddler brain and would not produce the results that I wanted. So observing the urge, I did not judge it. That's so important, you guys. Do not judge your urges. Just let them happen, meaning the experience and the feeling of the urge, allow it to happen, and know that you are not required in any way, shape, or form to feed or act upon that urge. So there's trick 1, is to observe your urge. Remember that your urge is not based in reality. You really do not need that elephant ear from the state fair. It is an urge that is not based in reality. It's an urge that's based on this primal desire for pleasure. And in our homework today, we're actually going to practice observing our urges. Okay, so that's one tool. The second tool is to make decisions ahead of time. So know that your toddler brain is naturally going to want to be recruited immediately. So decide ahead of time. You're going to a party, you know that there's going to be chocolate cake. Decide ahead of time. Recruit your adult brain in advance before the temptation is even there. Decide ahead of time that you don't eat chocolate cake. Boom, done. Decide ahead of time. Sometimes people can get hung up on this, and I like to use the analogy of being married. So you can decide ahead of time, and you can just close that part of your brain off. Marriage is a perfect example of this. When you got married, most of us at least, decided ahead of time that we were married for life and that we were not going to go sleep with other men, right? Okay, so you go into the grocery store, there's a hot produce guy, you think briefly, oh, I could do a little grab ass, but you've decided ahead of time that you don't sleep with other men, right? That was a decision that you made. Done. Brain done. You don't have to think about it anymore. And sure enough, when you walk out of that grocery store, you don't feel restricted or deprived. You don't go home to your husband and say, gosh, I'm so denied, the grab ass in the grocery store. You just decided ahead of time. You used your prefrontal cortex, your adult brain, to make a decision, and you stuck to it. Got it? And you can practice this with anything. And again, think about the analogy of being married. You've already done it. If you are in a committed relationship or in a monogamous relationship, I apologize for the terminology. I'm kind of all over the place here. If you're in a monogamous relationship, you've already made that commitment, so you know you can do it. If you're not married, you've made this commitment with other things too, so you know you can make decisions ahead of time, and you know you can stick to it. So that's the second mindset trick. So first was observe your urges. Second one is decide ahead of time. So the next time you go to that party and you know that there's going to be junk food, decide ahead of time what you're going to eat. Write it down in your food log. I'm going to eat X, Y, and Z. That's what you're going to eat. Done. Decision made. Moving on with my life. Okay, the third mindset trick is to be the scientist. And I gave you guys a handout, I think it was on day 2, about what it means to be the scientist. But essentially, this is a mindset trick where you observe your thoughts in an objective way. So maybe you walk past the elephant ear stand at the fair. If you guys don't know what an elephant ear is, it's like this piece of pastry dough that's been deep fried and then it's covered in sugar, so it's like gooey and just really sweet, and just not good for you at all. But of course it taps into all of those elements that make something super palatable and dopamine producing for us. So if you're going to be the scientist with the elephant ear at the fair analogy, you walk by, you're going to observe your urges, you're going to note them, and you're going to think, oh, that's really dang fascinating. Why am I so tempted and driven to eat this elephant ear? Why am I feeling anxiety in my belly over it? Not only that, but I've decided ahead of time that I'm not going to eat it, but yet I still feel really anxious. What is that about? That is so interesting. Do I have a thought in my head that's making me feel anxious? Ah, the thought in my head is, but I deserve that elephant ear. Is that true? Do I really deserve? Like, what do you mean I deserve an elephant ear? That doesn't make sense. What is an elephant ear going to make me rich and famous? Is it going to make me feel better? That's kind of a silly thought. Do I really deserve that? No, I'll tell you what I deserve. I deserve going over to the petting zoo with my crazy little toddler and laughing my ass off while she chases the pygmy goats around. That's something that I deserve. That's going to be fun. So do you see that by being the scientist, you take this objective, or you take this urge or this desire, and you just view it objectively. What we normally do is we walk past the elephant ear stand, we smell it, and we think, holy shit, I want that. I need that. I've got to have that. I really want it. Now I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? What's wrong with me? Why am I feeling this? Doesn't make any sense. Is something wrong with me? God, am I going to go off my diet? Oh, I can't stand this. This is so painful. Do you see how I just took my anxiety about wanting something and I created more anxiety about it? It's like stabbing myself in the foot. Your toddler is running with scissors so hard right now. It's like doing jumping jacks with the scissors. You got to back up. You got to be the scientist. Know that this is a very normal human response and that you can use your adult brain to observe it. So those are the 3 mindset tricks that are so incredibly powerful to counteract this natural desire of our body, of our brain to want to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and be efficient. So to counteract those, we observe our urges, we make decisions ahead of time, and we are the scientist. So you can find, I know that was a super quick overall summary, you guys, and in the Strong Mom Fitness program, we take a full week to go through these concepts and to really apply them. So if you feel overwhelmed, don't be, don't worry about it. I know it's a lot, but if you have questions, please ask. And today, for today's homework, we're going to observe our urges. So on the Strong Mom Fitness page, our website online forum, you will find a handout that you can download, and you're going to observe 10 urges. 10 urges today. You're going to write those urges down. So if you want to print it out and carry that with you throughout the day, observe them and write them down. Or you can put it in your notes in your iPhone and then just take a screenshot of it and post it to either the online forum or to our Facebook tribe page if you want. So you're observing your urges. Now, maybe you've observed urges that aren't necessarily food related. Maybe you're having urges that are to procrastinate at work, or maybe you're having urges to not exercise. Any urge that you have that you would rather not have, that you feel like is counterintuitive to your goals, observe them, recognize them, write them down. Okay, guys. Woo, that was awesome. We made it to our destination safely. So my toddler brain is excited that we have survived, and my adult brain is ready and prepared to go inside and kick some butt. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.